Good morning, students. Today, in lecture number 15, we are going to discuss the culture according to F.R. Lewis. In the previous two lectures, we have discussed about the definition of culture, which F.R. Lewis defines in his well-known book, Culture and Environment. According to him, he divides the culture of pre-industrial time and industrial time. And he, by defining the two cultures, come to the conclusion that the culture of pre-industrial time is good compared to the second industrial time, because the unity of men living altogether in harmony, compromise and adjustment in business relations are important while living in any society. After the comparison between the two cultures, culture of pre-industrial time and culture of industrial time, he further defines the ideal norms of the culture. And according to him, the two true culture and false culture means the industrial times. The false culture means we can say the artificial, pretentious, where there is no love and attachment, only formality is there. That culture is called as a false culture, and true culture means the common bond, common attachment and affection of the people while living together. So he says, one means we have to accept the true culture, the culture of pre-industrial time, and we have to reject the second one, the false culture, culture of the industrial time. And further he says that as today, he says we need the environment today, we need to exercise powerful counter influence, means we need to exercise, to practice he says a powerful counter influence that makes on the people, coming generation, and also the people who live, practice and use it. So he further says, though it is this function which literature at its best effectively discharges. Further he says, the reference of Ezra Pound, the well-known critic, writer and the social observer's reference, he says, Ezra Pound, he says, define the conception of literature and culture. He says, Ezra Pound defined it, language charged with meaning to the utmost possible degree, means language of communication, how it must be. Ezra Pound says, language charged with meaning, language charged with meaning to the utmost possible degree. This is Ezra Pound talks about the language of communication, language of culture, language of the people use. So it must be charged with meaning to the utmost possible degree, means it must be, or it must have the depth, attachment, affection, meaning and so on. So, to the utmost possible degree, that say, but together with the other arts, it also mixed with the other arts and further says about the same, according to Israel, language charged with meaning to the utmost possible degree, and further it must be the storehouse. It must be the storehouse of recorded values. Whatever are the good things in the society, they must be recorded, so that the future generation definitely use the valuables or values of the society to continue it, to preserve it, to keep it in balance. So, according to Israel, language must be the storehouse of recorded values, which is useful for the ideal and healthy culture. And further it says that, Ezra says that it is the writer's duty to preserve the traditions through their text. Means in their literature they have to explore the literary tradition of the age or the cultural traditions of the age, so that the generation simply follow it, use it, preserve it and record it. So writer's duty is important. So he says writers have to explore the cultural tradition of the age. Writers has to explore the cultural tradition of the age, and so that what happens, it automatically gives me tradition of his age, so that what happens, the cultural tradition of that time, the time of the writer, automatically preserved or recorded and will pass generation to generation. So in this way, tradition, culture, ideals, values will be preserved forever from one generation to another generation. So writer has to explore, and further he divides writers of two types. One, the minor writers. Minor writers merely follow this tradition. This tradition means the tradition of recording the values of his time through his text. So minor writers merely follow this tradition, and at the same time the gifted writers, mean the classical writers who have the profound knowledge, he says the gifted one means the gifted writers minor writers versus the gifted writers means who have the tremendous knowledge. The gifted writers enrich it in a diverse way, enrich the culture in a diverse way. So, according to Israel Paul, the culture of that time is very well preserved by the language. So language must be charged with meaning, the language of the writers, and at the same time it must have the storehouse of recorded values. And after that, it is the main role of the writers who through their text explore the cultural tradition of that age, so that it passed from one generation to another generation. And minor writers, according to Israel, follow the tradition of exploring the culture of his time through his text, the values, ideas, culture, society, norms, everything, and said that the gifted writers enrich the tradition of our culture in a diverse way. Beside what minor writers explore, the gifted one enrich it means decorate it, add the depth, knowledge, and everything in it, and represent it is in a different way. So the gifted writers were of enriching the language or the culture of their time is more important because it is who is enrichment and who is presentation in a different way that according to his account it says the gifted writers works in age after age that together form the literary tradition of nation. Means such enrichment and representation in a diverse way of the gifted writers' cultural exploration keep the cultural tradition of the nation, and once the cultural tradition of the nation preserved, then it will automatically pass from one generation to another. So the gifted one writers enrich the tradition in a diverse way, and that definitely keep preserve the cultural tradition of the age or of the nation. And so that is called when we keep the preserve the cultural tradition of the nation, and that is the best nations, best culture, or it is best of the nation's culture will be called. And so the very focus of F.R. Lewis is on culture, its preservement, and its message from one generation to another to form cultural tradition of a nation and to keep it and preserve it. That is very important. So further he says, when we keep the cultural tradition of the nation, then what will happen? It is communicated from the past to the present, and from the present to the future. It is automatically communicated from one generation to another. And so it means that a fit audience through few, and the widest community it spreads. So it follows therefore literature for Lewis or to Lewis, it is an aesthetic experience. Aesthetic experience means opposed to the moral, and that F.R. Lewis very well represents, confirms, and stresses on the preservation of the cultural tradition of the nation, and that he very well represents through his text, culture, and environment. And further, F.R. Lewis very well compares the function of history and the state of culture, and he says the history, and he makes the comparison between history and literature. According to F.R. Lewis, history explores only the bare record or state of findings. So, on the other side, literature represents new inventions. So, what he further says, no doubt the function of history is to explore the state of culture. It explores the state of culture, means how it is, only it represents in each age. How? In history very depicts the state of the culture of each age, but its method is different from that of literature. Because what literature does, in the first instance, its exploration proceeds no further than a bare record. It is only history means only a bare record of the things. It very well states, it gives a state of culture in each age, but when we go further, it seems only a bare record of the things. incidents, situations, or happenings. And whereas literature offers invariably its evaluation. Literature offers invariably invariably its evaluation, means what is important and what not. Then they come to the conclusion. The taste and habits it fosters, means the culture, the taste and habits it fosters. And finally, this effect on the quality of living. Its effects definitely finally comes on the quality of living of the people. The quality of living. So in this way, F.R. very well compares history and literature, and he comes to the conclusion that literature definitely gives its evaluation invariably, and finally talks about the taste and habits it fosters, and it makes the effects on the quality of living. So this, according to F.R. which he very well represents this idea through the text common pursuit, that history and literature, when he compares, history only gives the state of the happenings and it is nothing but the bare record. And 5. Literature invariably makes its evaluation. It tests and fosters the effects on the quality of living that he very well highlights through his text common pursuit. And finally, F.R. says that while history is merely content to state its findings, only findings, what they have found, what they have come to the conclusion, or how they have come, means in so and so war, how many people died, their record it gives. But literature, particularly the poetical form, poetical genre, according to F.R. its evocative use of words makes everything real. Because literature in general and poetry makes everything real. So literature is very useful. It makes everything real for us. Words into not state but realize and experience. Yes, words nothing but gives us one different experience. So literature in general, poetry in particular, relives and gives different experiences. So their true function of literature is not cloth and already clothed, means जो कपडे घातलेले त्याला कपडे घालायचं नाही already, but means function not to clothe and already formed or clothed through, but to bring very thought into being, means from nothingness to bring something, and not to form the cloth to the already clothed or in form, but to bring the very thought into being. So Lewis calls, F.R. Lewis calls it the exploratory creative use of words upon experiences, and that he represents through his well-known text common pursuit. So exploratory creative use of words upon experiences, that which makes literature live, relive, words upon experiences, and invent new things. So literature, according to F.R. Lewis, plays an important role in keeping the culture, its values, its record, and simply passing from generation to the generation. So, by giving the references of his reform, by giving the references from the text culture and environment, by giving the references from his well-known text common pursuit, he very well highlights the importance of literature through culture, or importance of culture through literature, which is important through his well-known text. So, my dear friends, with this, I stop and finish FRO's conception of literature. In the next lectures, we will discuss the literary terms, which are 10 in numbers. We will discuss them one after another. So, with this brief information, I stop here. Thank you. Thank you very much.